Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Fratello Talks, the weekly short-form podcast where we skip the intro and jump right into it. I'm your host, Nacho, and this week I'm joined by my colleagues,
RJ
and
Lex.
And we're going to be discussing the topic of why does Rolex always win? But before we jump into it, let's do a wrist check. What's on your wrist today, Lex?
Grand Seiko SBGX 341, a tough quartz sports model. Yeah.
You were
With a
ready
white
for that.
dial.
You had the reference in your pocket.
That's incredible.
Very
right?
nice.
There's no other option with Grand Seiko.
Yeah, but I'm so bad at references, and it took me quite a while to get the hang of
Is
it.
there a nickname for that one already? Or
We can come
the
up.
Lex?
That is actually the perfect nickname for
white
it.
Lex.
So yeah, it's decided right here, right now. This is the Lex.
Good.
Wonderful. Perfect. And what's on your wrist, RJ?
Well, it's a bit on point for this podcast episode. It's a Rolex Sea Dweller.
Yeah.
16600 from the 90s.
Very nice, very nice. Well, one of us had to do it, and
Yes.
and I think you're the one best equipped. I'm wearing my Omega Seamaster 2254.50.00, just to give the full reference for no reason. But yeah, the 2254, and it's not quite a Rolex. It looks a bit like a Submariner, but it's very much a Seamaster.
No, it doesn't look like a
No.
Submariner,
Okay,
no.
but yeah, well, you know,
It
but
really has its own identity.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
But yeah, so this is my watch for today, basically.
Nice, very nice.
Thanks,
I like it on
thanks.
a bracelet. I also see you often wearing it on a strap.
Yeah, sometimes
But I prefer
it's,
this.
Actually, I have a little bit of trouble at the moment because I'm missing a half link for the bracelet.
yeah.
So it's either a little bit too big.
Half-Link,
Yeah.
isn't that from Lord of the Rings?
No, not quite. Almost.
sorry.
But I'm writing to Tolkien's estate to try and secure a half link. So it's just either a little bit too big or a little bit too small.
Yeah.
But so I think one half link might save it.
Yeah.
But that's why I end up wearing it on the strap more than anything
Makes
else.
sense.
But back to the week's topic.
Why is RJ winning?
Yeah, you're winning today.
I'm always winning. Like Rolex.
But is it
Yeah.
actually the nicest watch here? Let's start this topic really small. Is it the nicest watch here? That's up for debate, of course.
Well, that's
I mean,
beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I
Yeah,
would say.
exactly.
yeah, for sure. But you know, I think it's probably the most classically styled of the watches. I mean, your Grand Seiko is very modern, very its own thing. I think the Omega is very much its own thing as well, and it's very much of a time. Whereas the Rolex, it's quite a timeless thing.
Archetypical modern dive watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The
For sure.
evolved
But
Submariner.
Yeah, and I think that chimes into their success because they made little changes. Whether you look at the first Sea Dweller in this case or the current one, they all somewhat look alike, and they make only small changes, small differences. Especially for those who are a bit further away from the watch industry or from collecting watches, the differences are quite small, I would say.
Right.
Of course, there's ceramic bezel, and there's the Cyclops.
The
is on the new
Cyclops,
one.
exactly.
But still, I think for the novice collector or enthusiast, those are just small
Hey,
differences.
it looks like a Rolex.
And it looks like a Rolex.
Yeah.
I think where Rolex made mistakes, and I think that's interesting. Well,
Do they make mistakes?
Mistakes in my opinion was the Day 2.
Okay.
And the large Datejust. I don't know if it was actually Datejust 2. I think people refer to it as a Datejust 2, but it was the 41.
Yeah.
No, it was 40. It was a 40 millimeter Datejust, and it was just bulky. And the Day 2, which was also larger than the today's 36 and 40 millimeter date.
But they do make watches that don't work.
Yeah, well, they discontinued them quite rapidly, I would say.
Yeah.
What they also discontinued very rapidly was the Rolex Cellini Prince.
I was the
Late 90s,
rectangular
early
thing.
2000s. Rectangular, in gold
Yeah.
only.
The Prince. I remember the Prince from Basel World.
Yeah, and I don't think that many people will know this watch. Because to me, it was interesting that they kept it in the collection still for quite a few years.
Yeah.
While the Day 2 and the larger Datejust, let's call it Datejust 2, was also discontinued rather rapidly, I would say.
What about the recent Cellini, the most recent Cellini? How old is that?
Yeah, so the one prior to the 1908,
Yeah,
which is
prior
not a
to
Cellini.
this
So
one.
they did a Cellini, and those also came with complications.
Yeah,
I
the
think like a
moon,
moon phase or
moon phase,
calendar.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were only in the collection for a few years.
4 years or something?
Yeah, something
4
like
years?
that.
I think it's 4 years.
And discontinued, and that's so un-Rolexy.
But then they released something
Yeah.
that is very much like it. It was almost, to me, like admitting we made a mistake and now we turned it around.
Yeah,
and
but they don't talk about it.
No,
And I think that's
and
their
they also
strength.
skipped the name Cellini.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
still holds I think maybe because I'm old, but
Yeah.
it brings a little bit of classical joy and
Yeah, so
It's not a bad
sophistication
name. It's
to
not
the whole Rolex.
So I think these
thing.
could be considered screw-ups of Rolex. But I think in the past, I think there's little that Rolex screwed up.
It's a screw-up crown. It's a big difference.
Screw down.
Screw
Yeah.
down
But what do you
crown
think?
is a
Because
screw-up
we
crown.
obviously see them winning also in terms of numbers. Like in terms of sales numbers, it's
Yeah.
always top of the list.
Yeah, but we also see it in demand on Google. If you do Google Analytics
Right,
or Google,
right.
what is it, Trends?
Yeah, yeah.
Rolex
Google
is
Trends.
winning. You see it on Chrono 24. I think half of the demand on that website goes to Rolex watches.
Yeah.
We also see it on Fratello, on our own readership. If we publish something around Rolex, it's
Yeah,
They're
it'll,
winning,
it'll
yeah.
people will start talking.
Gets the most
and,
traffic, yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, they're sponsoring the
Formula
top
One.
athletes.
Yeah.
They're winning at everything.
So they hardly make mistakes, you could say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hardly, because if you look at other brands and just well, we can name a few brands, but I think there's always a few screw ups from brands that we see every year, at Watches and Wonders, and previously SIHH and Baselworld, that we think, oh, why did you do this?
They're
Oh, why did you
incredibly
do that?
consistent.
They're incredibly consistent, and I think that starts in the 50s already with the Submariner introduction, the Datejust in the 40s, and of course the Day-Date in the 50s. They're so consistent.
Also in their communication.
yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like there's no big risk taking involved. Would you call?
But you could
anything-
also say it's a risk.
What about the jigsaw? That was quite a
Yeah,
the
but-
recent jigsaw.
But,
That
it,
is-
but it's
isn't
but
that
it's
a risk?
kind of it feels like a bit like a risk, but I feel that it's also just hey, here's something a little bit different. It's more. Yeah, I suppose.
But now they have the traction because people jump on Rolex regardless today. Whatever they do, people want it. Because I was not a fan of the watch with the balloons. I'm not a fan of the jigsaw one. I think it's weird. We first thought it might be April Fool's joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
It wasn't.
I kind of like the balloons actually. That's
I
Of
don't,
the
I
two,
don't like them.
Of the two, that's my preference.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
But I think people jump on them regardless. Well, I think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, they could not, how do you say, do these mistakes or justify these kind of weird watches, I would say.
But it feels as though they sort of like the risk is sort of kept to a minimum. It's here's a one-off day date that has this special dial, that has this special function. It's not going to be hugely available. It's like a very small risk, relatively speaking.
yeah.
Whereas if you look at like Omega's Seamaster 75th anniversary collection, it's a huge amount of watches with these very with this conceptual sort of dial where you have the sort of, as it gets more water resistant, it gets darker, and that feels like here's an entire collection where people usually will like it, but they might like it, they might like it less. They're never going to sell as much as the core models, but at the same time, it's 11 SKUs, whereas Rolex maybe puts out 2 risky watches from a handful that they might release in a year.
It's
The
very
thing is
calculated risk. And also in the past, when I started collecting watches in the late 90s and early 2000s, I was very keen on collecting Rolex watches. Different times, different prices. And there we always would complain, how can Rolex do these watches with a clasp like a Coca-Cola can and so on? They don't innovate. And if they innovate, it's once every 10 years.
Yeah.
I think in hindsight, that was their strength. Because they changed so little that they were very consistent in what they do and what they would release. And I think in recent years, only if I look at the Sea Dweller again, they stopped producing this one, I think, in 2009 or 2008. Then for a very brief moment, there was a successor in between 2014 and 2017. And then you had the Deep Sea suddenly. Later on, they came with a 43 millimeter with red printing, with a Cyclops on the date. So they became a little bit weird in their introductions.
But they also can't make any mistakes because people will buy anything nowadays. Because you remember the Oyster Professionals with the Sunray dials in different colors.
Yeah, with the gray,
nobody really cared for them. They were discontinued. They also, I think, they screwed up with the size because you had there was a 39 millimeter Oyster Professional. I thought that was the perfect size.
It's Oyster Perpetual.
It's the OP, and now 36 and 41, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Now they have the Stella dials or the new Stella dials. When they came out, nobody gave a rat's ass. But all of a sudden, everything they do is a hit. And that's also because of the huge demand, of course, the millions of Instagram views you have when you wear a Rolex. So now it's also beyond a debate of taste. It is because it's worth something. It has become a commodity. I don't care what IBM stock looks like, or I should say Apple stock looks like. It just holds value. I don't care, and I think that's the same with a Rolex. I don't care what it looks like.
But then, how would you then look at something like, let's talk about the Explorer 1. Going from 36.
Do we really have to talk about the Explorer one of the most boring watches in the history.
But look
of
at
watches.
it grow and shrink and grow again, right?
Yeah,
it's
turn
an interesting
into half
thing.
gold and
That's
there's also half gold sea dweller.
That's so. These are kind of the odd things where it feels like almost the way that that Rolex avoids it being seen as too much of a failure is that they just, here's something that we've done. We're not going to hype it up too much. People will either gravitate towards it or not, and then we'll discontinue it after a few years, but it's still a few years. There's no sort of rush to get rid of something that maybe people don't like that much. It just kind of fizzles out. People might have a reaction at the beginning, but then eventually they'll sort of come down from that. And then very subtly it gets put in the backlog and then it's gone, right?
the Milgauss.
Well, the Milgauss was more of a less subtle sort of retraction. I mean,
That was
everybody
also quite a risk they took with the
getting rid of
with
it.
the Milgauss.
True.
And it was not that popular at first.
No. You could just buy with the
discount,
green
right?
green with the green crystal.
Yeah.
And then just as it sort of arguably reaches peak popularity, then it's gone.
So I think the question,
I don't know.
To answer the question, why is Rolex always winning? I think it's consistency.
Yeah.
It's also consistency in everything they do. So we get those Rolex magazines, is accompanied with a letter. And the letter, I think it has its own color, the paper, the printing is really nice. The magazine is very nice. Everything they do, one of you just mentioned, the ambassadors, they're very carefully picked. I think the events that they sponsor are very carefully picked. It's so much thought.
But it's also in the hardware. I mean, if you look at a modern Rolex, you can definitely see the evolution of every single element in the watch. So the bracelets have gone better. The clasp has gone better. The movements are steadily evolving. You can debate. I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so we like the Sea Dweller because it doesn't have a Cyclops. Now they have a Cyclops. Why does it have a Cyclops? Because they found a technique to put a Cyclops on there that will stay on the glass.
Under high pressure.
Et cetera, et cetera. Right. So you might not like it, but maybe they wanted to do it in the first place, but they couldn't find the right bonding technique. So they did.
Basically,
it's an evolution.
Every new Rolex is better than the previous one, quality-wise.
Yeah.
Whether that's for looks, it's something else, because I prefer the 5-digit models, like I'm wearing today, or the day-date that I have. I prefer those models rather than a new one, because they're too shiny, too blingy.
I have the same. There's something with the proportions I don't like, but it's a better product.
It's a better product, definitely. And
the feel of it, the quality, the machining, the
new
tolerances.
bracelets are better, whether that's gold or steel. It's always better in a new product. And I think that's quite impressive, what they do.
For sure.
It's also, we have also to keep in mind that there's no other brand like Rolex. I think if there's another brand that comes close in terms of quality and production scale, I think it's Omega. If it's in terms of brand name, I think it's Cartier. In luxury brand name. Yeah, but I think it's
But in terms of name,
but I think for a large audience, because we are a watch audience, but if you ask anyone on the street, I don't think Patek will ring a bell unless they're on Instagram following all sorts of rappers. But I think Cartier is a luxury brand name as well. And I think Rolex, they moved away from being solely a watch brand to a luxury brand name. They established themselves as a luxury brand.
Yeah. This morning I listened to a Belgian podcast about the United States. It's the history and culture aspects of the United States put in music.
I hope it was a short drive to the office.
It was 45 minutes, but it's really interesting. And the fun thing is that this morning it was about protest songs, etc., etc. There was a protest song from the 80s complaining about yuppies. 1983 or something. So it was Yuppie IA, and was complaining about them wearing polo shirts, but also Rolex was mentioned in that song. So already in 1983, Rolex was always seen as
it was the Wall Street watch, right?
Watch brand. So
gold steel Datejust,
and that's also why it's winning.
Yeah.
If you ask anyone without any knowledge of luxury watches, they will know Rolex.
Yeah.
Or of watches at all. I mean, they'll be able to go, what's a watch brand? Rolex. That will be it. That will always be it. They become sort of almost prototypical of the concept of a watch in that sense. Even though they're still out of reach for many people, it's still somehow this aspirational thing.
Exactly.
Its meaning even goes a little bit beyond. It's like when you made it, you get a Rolex.
That's and also, it just pops in my head, you say it's similar as to stock, right? Stock that keeps its value. But if I look back to the 90s and early 2000s, where you could buy a Rolex with discount and but sometimes you lost some money on a Rolex, except the Daytona perhaps, but then it was still number one.
Yeah.
And Rolex was still number one.
And you could still buy your way out of a remote jungle in Southeast Asia with your Rolex.
So the legend goes,
Yeah. I never tried.
So I'm not sure if it's only, I think it's a combination of things, but I think consistency is the key word. Yeah.
So, the definitive answer to why is Rolex always winning is
they're consistent.
They're consistent.
I think there's no other single brand that is as consistent as Rolex. And I think in a previous one of our previous meetings in the office here at Fratello, we also discussed: are there any brands outside the watch industry that have like a similar status or reception like Rolex? We could look, if we look at fountain pens, we could look at Montblanc, for example. Is that a Rolex but it's not the same.
Nike.
Yeah, but
Nike doesn't feel as luxurious.
No, it's not luxurious.
But a luxury brand.
That is
I think we briefly mentioned Leica cameras.
Yeah, we were mentioning Leica, and we were mentioning.
Also niche.
We were also mentioning.
If you look at
Porsche.
something with a broader span, a way broader span.
We were mentioning Porsche as well.
Yeah, but only the 911, I would say, because Porsche also did things wrong, I would say. They were not always consistent.
But it is very interesting that you say Porsche because, of course, the 911. I don't like the current model, but it's better than the previous one.
Yeah.
So that is
exactly. It's the same as you might say that you prefer a 5-digit or a 4-digit reference Rolex than the current model, which for some of us is the case. And so then you would say, it's a similar thing. It's
Porsche
innovation.
But then I would say it's Porsche 911.
Yeah.
Is Rolex, because if you look at the Taycan or the Cayenne,
because Porsche also does Cellinis. They did the 914. Yeah. They did the 924. So they also do.
But their consistency lies within the 911.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. The same for Rolex. I think with all the Cellini watches, they had a Beta 21 quartz watch. It was also shortly lived. The Oyster quartz is interesting, but it was there for quite a long time, from 77 to 2003.
But I'm really looking forward to a solar-powered Oyster quartz in 2024.
Hey, never say never.
Don't hold your breath.
No,
but also,
definitely
also
hold my breath.
Did Rolex do any screw-ups when it comes to ambassadors?
Yeah. No. Oh. I was going to say Tiger Woods, but they're also very forgiving. They're very loyal.
Yeah.
No, they didn't do anything. Some ambassadors.
I think Tag Heuer let him go, right, at some point.
Yeah.
And then Rolex took him on board. Yeah. Is he still on board with Rolex?
I think so. I think once you're on board, you never get off.
Yeah, unless something.
It's like the Hotel California.
Who was this the tennis player, the young guy? I forget his name, but he was also a Rolex ambassador, and then he was all kinds of a problematic character.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember his name, but a German tennis player. I think he was.
It's not Boris Becker.
No. It was. I forget his name. I can't think of it now. But I think
he didn't have a. Was it Zverev? That's. I think he doesn't have a German name.
Yeah, it might be Zverev. But I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll
look
it up. We'll put it in the show notes.
He beat his girlfriend.
Exactly. Yeah, which is
with his Rolex.
Domestic violence is definitely not something you want to see from a brand ambassador. But I think other than that, but when you pick an ambassador. There's some safe bets. I mean, Federer feels like the most exemplary of brand ambassadors.
The best brand ambassador ever.
The best thing you can kind of hope for. I mean, Clooney for Omega is quite
safe,
quite good, I would say. But in a way, you can never know what they're going to do, especially when you jump onto a younger ambassador. I mean, who knows what they're going to do with the rest of their lives? I mean, they can be very successful at what they do, but then... So I wouldn't fault that too much on the brand side. I mean, it's you can never know, but at the same time, everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah, but they have good ambassadors. They had good ambassadors always at Rolex.
Always.
Jack Nicklaus and all these big names.
Top opera singer,
But they fit the brand. It feels like there's that sort of like there's a lot of awareness. There's never a choice where you sort of wonder, oh, but this doesn't feel like a very Rolex.
Like Tudor did with Lady Gaga.
We mentioned that as well,
choice.
And it was a bit of an odd one. But
badmouth Gaga.
No, she's
Don't
great.
do it.
Yeah, she just didn't wear the watches.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but so I would say in that sense, it's a lot of it's consistency and almost self-awareness and really understanding what the brand means to people and what the brand even means and how it should present itself. There's this sort of profound self-awareness, which combined with the consistency means
and I also think they don't they don't bulge. What is it? Under pressure, they don't nick under.
Exactly. They don't fold under pressure.
Hoyer, phrase?
No. They don't crack under pressure. But they. So last year, the year before, they released new watches, the Watches and Wonders. Then a few weeks after, we had a meeting with them in their Brussels office in Belgium, and they showed us the new Deep Sea, which had some small changes, and they didn't release it or introduce it during Watches and Wonders because it was not finished, and they don't feel the urge to we need to hurry this up, and then we make do concessions and we put it out. No, we wait, and it's no hurries, no worries.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's very strong because oftentimes we see watches at Watches and Wonders and in the past Basel World and so on that were not ready yet.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and they don't do that. They sort of wait until the products are completely
really
ready
done.
to go.
Yeah.
And so it's this like self-awareness, consistency, and then also not panicking, not making decisions under pressure, not folding to pressure. Just kind of you stick to it. There's a plan. You follow it.
I do think that in today's day and age, they look at other brands more than they did in the past. They were very quick to come with another watch after Omega did their Ultra Deep record watch.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
That's
an interesting
example.
They do look at
as well.
other brands and what they're doing. I think that's healthy.
Yeah. It's an interesting example as well because when you look at the watch Omega made, it's very sort of unique in its aesthetic. It's a Planet Ocean, but it's very, it looks like something that isn't reflected within...
Especially the titanium one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the Rolex, it looks like a beefed up Sea Dweller.
Yes.
Kind of. I mean, it's like like XXL kind of version of that, but it still remains very Rolex, very classic. It has an oyster bracelet. It's titanium, but it's a little bit of a... It still remains very much like on brand and within the DNA.
Yeah. But I think in general... Rolex does not look at what others do. I think they keep a pulse.
Yeah.
But they don't really do something with it.
They're not worried about it.
They're not worried about it. They do what they do. Or at least they don't show that they're worried about it.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't look worried.
No.
But I think other brands could take an example of that by not looking too much at other brands or don't look too much at Rolex.
It helps give this sense of confidence, and then it helps give your products a little bit more...
It's a bit like Oris, go your own way. And I feel like, that's their slogan, I feel like brands should do that a little bit more often.
Because there's so many Rolex lookalike watches, of course.
Yeah.
Also from very established
and it's not
brands.
necessary, I feel.
No.
So, but it's good. It only underlines, I think, the success of Rolex when other brands start to do the different dial colors and so on, use the similar kind of designs. Yeah. Just underlines the success of Rolex.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect.
So, well, Rolex I think is always winning,
that's an interesting one, and I think we would love to hear our audience's thoughts, of course. So, if you have anything to share with us, leave it in the comments. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or whether you're listening in or watching it on the site, please leave us your thoughts in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you, and make sure to like, subscribe, and tune in next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. Until then, goodbye.